Welcome to the James Rowe Show on the Barroom Sports Talk Network. I'm James Rowe, my esteemed colleague, and still looking for more friends, Brian.
Thanks for having me. Glad to join.
Brian, I gotta ask, are you really going to go out there and try and find any friends? I understand the pandemic and stuff, but you seem to keep crawling back.
I know. Now I have the hoodie on. This disgusting beard's growing a little bit longer every day. Yeah, I got to get outside. I think it's just 2020 kind of on everybody, but everybody's feeling it a bit right now. But you gotta stay inside, do your part to kind of slow the spread of the virus. So not going out and meeting new people these days. If that to answer your question.
I got a serious question for you. Do you even go out and bathe? And because it looks like you just don't do anything.
I don't go out to bathe. I do that here, but but yeah, no, I get what you're getting at. Yeah, no, I do get up and today being the exception with the hoodie on. But you're right. There are some days I certainly don't get out of sweats and just kind of work in this attire all day long. So I like it in that regard. I like it.
I don't blame you. I mean, it is much more comfortable being in this situation, but at the same point, it is kind of nice to be outside and actually going out to watch a sports game.
Oh my goodness, yes. We're in month 9 now. I think just completed month 9. I've been on lockdown since mid-March. Really worked from home since then. I know you've had to go into work, but still a lot of this shutdown of sports has just made it a weird college football season, a weird sports season in all sports, but college football especially when you're not able to get out there on campus.
Well, so in our podcast this time around, we promise for it to be a lot shorter.
That's right.
Because the last time, apparently, according to me, our feedback was we were just too good. We were just too good. We were just
according to you. According to you.
No, I'm talking to the feedback I was getting. I mean,
okay.
apparently we were like, oh, you guys had a really good chemistry and all that stuff. You guys could have gone on and on. That's the problem. We just kept going on and on.
That's right. So we'll limit ourselves. We'll try to stick to 30 minutes, maybe something around that. Shorter episodes certainly going forward to be quick episodes for the people.
Absolutely. Now
keep the fans happy, James. That's what this is all about.
I'm selfish. I just want to be happy about myself and what I produce. Screw the fans. I'm joking. All
right. Quickly though, this is a bar room sports talk show. What are you drinking this evening?
Well, good sir, this is a hoppy holiday ale, according to Rheingeist.
And I like it.
Literally, it's called Dad.
Just a dad beer. Good. I'm drinking.
I have a dad bod, so I might as well drink a dad beer.
It's a dad bod. It's kind of like chicken or egg. Dad bod first, or drinking a bunch of beer gets you the dad bod.
No, the beer definitely gets you the dad bod.
I'm drinking a Founders All Day IPA out of Grand Rapids. One of my favorites. Their session ale. It's really good. Have stick in the fridge. A whole 15 are in the fridge. So trying to stay away from bourbon. As we went on for an hour last episode, I can't be doing 2 things of bourbon. So hopefully this one beer will stick. I'll stay true here and won't mix up Indiana and Notre Dame again.
Wait. What school did you go to? No, I'm joking.
I can't give anyone who gets it wrong. They didn't go to Notre Dame. So that's right.
Right, exactly. All right, now that we've gone over the preliminaries, as that we like to call it, let's talk about last week. So I think the best part is we were saying in our last podcast, let's talk about whether or not we're going to be happy or we're going to be sad after this podcast. And let's say it's been all doom and gloom since Saturday. Yeah, that was not fun.
Yeah, let's start with the recap. So, Clemson wins 34-10 in a game that's much different than the first game in early November, right, where Notre Dame wins in double overtime. It never seemed to me, just my quick reaction, and I got to be honest, I even turned it off in the second half. Like, I couldn't even watch the final piece of the game, and I didn't think that would all be the case when number 2's playing number 3. But It was a great game in the first quarter. I thought Notre Dame played well. Outside of one big play, they kind of held
yeah.
Clemson in check in the first quarter.
You're talking about the missed field goal, right?
They did miss. Yeah, they had the short chip shot field goal they missed. But no, I was talking about the long pass play down the middle. I forget who the receiver was. I think it was Amari Rogers who had that first touchdown. And after that, it just felt like the floodgates opened up. You're right. I do think that missed field goal was kind of a momentum shifter. Notre Dame was up 3-0, could have gone 6-0 after the interception of Lawrence. And I thought, oh, this is the way it's Notre Dame's path to victory. I think they play a much better when they're ahead. A lot of teams do, but especially Notre Dame being able to run the ball. But I still don't think they would have won the game. I don't want to put it on that missed field goal at all. I mean, they lost 34-10. So I think Trevor Lawrence proved he's Trevor Lawrence. We talked a lot last week of and everybody did, of what the difference is going to be between him and DJ, who was QB in the first game. What would you think? I mean, Trevor seemed to be, everything lived up to the hype of who he was and who the reputation he's had. He had the long run down the middle. He seemed to be finding the open receivers when they were open. And the Clemson offense just looked much more dynamic than the first game.
Yeah. So one of the first things I thought of when I was watching that game was, okay, if you look at just the numbers, Lawrence clearly didn't have as good of a game as Uiagalelei. But if you really quantify what is seen on tape, Lawrence was 100% the biggest reason why Clemson won this past game. And it's because he's a veteran. That's what he is. He is a veteran guy. And, I was watching some of the highlights on ESPN and other networks. They were showing, this is a play that DJ should have made, but he overthrew his guy. There was a guy who was wide open over here, but he didn't see it.
Yeah.
It's the veteran play of Lawrence that really helped the most. The thing was, I will say, in this game in general, I don't think it's because Clemson was the better team. I think Clemson was just more prepared.
Yeah, I could see that. It's tough to measure that, preparedness. What made you think that, I guess?
Well, the reason why I say that is because I still get all these text messages, and I still get all these messages from a lot of people who are like, oh, they didn't have Trevor Lawrence the last game. Oh, they didn't have Skalski in the last game. You guys won because it was just an unfair advantage. Well, hold on. I mean, I'm not saying that Notre Dame is better than Clemson. I'm just saying that Clemson had – or no, not Clemson. Notre Dame was also missing a lot of key guys too. And Uiagalelei –
in the first game, you're saying?
Yeah, was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's also hard to beat a team twice.
Yeah. Especially a team as good as Clemson. Yeah.
And the thing is, and the reason why I say they were more prepared is because Clemson had played Notre Dame before.
Yep.
So they're like, okay, we got to do this the next time. We got to do that the next time. So if there was hypothetically a third game, which is still a big possibility at this point, I think anything goes, because at that point, Brian Kelly's just going to be like, oh, I know what to do here. And I'm sure Davos Sweeney is going to be like, okay, we saw these guys the last two times. I know what to do.
See, I only think we've been focusing a lot on Trevor Lawrence and that side of the ball. I think the inverse is true, where the Notre Dame offense really showed it was maybe, not – and this is exactly how I thought if they would lose this game, how Notre Dame would lose to Clemson is they couldn't keep up with Clemson scoring if they were playing from behind, where they have to throw the ball and lean on Ian Book in and out and can't really run a play action. Now, Kyron Williams had a decent game, but certainly not in anything close to the game he had the first time they played. He just wasn't as dynamic. I think he only had 50 yards rushing on 15 carries. But it's hard for this Notre Dame team to come back and really score at the frequency that some of these high-powered offenses like that Clemson can score when they have all their pieces, and Trevor Lawrence leading the offense. I mean, Clemson scored 34 points. I think we talked last time that, in the double overtime game in regulation, they scored maybe it was 31, 32,
33, yeah.
33 points. It's a point more than what they scored the first game. Really, the difference here being the offense for Notre Dame just couldn't get moving and really get anything going. And not a great game from Ian Book. What's nuts is there was no turnovers. You'd expect with this score line, maybe Notre Dame lost the turnover battle, but that wasn't the case. And in fact, anything, they got the interception off Lawrence, which happened so infrequent. You should be blessed just to get one. So I don't know. Tough to take. This is what I was expecting. The first game against Clemson was kind of this sort of talent discrepancy, and what I saw on Saturday. So it's tough to be optimistic going up against Alabama here in the college football playoff in the Rose Bowl.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be one of our next talking points. But at the same point, I'm just, with this game, there's just so much hype. There was so much.
There was
expectations. It's kind of hard to be optimistic going into the playoffs, but at the same point, I really truly believe that Notre Dame didn't. The score doesn't necessarily represent how bad or how good they played, but I do think that it definitely represents a lack of preparation, and it's not necessarily their fault. And the reason why I say that is because Dabo Swinney
he's a very good coach.
Yeah, and he did not expect that, and maybe that. I mean, Swinney's so used to playing in conference so much that that it helps his cause. That's not me saying that they should join the conference. I'm just saying that I think that aspect helps him in beating Kelly in this game, because Kelly has never, not saying that he's never, but I'm saying for when he's been with Notre Dame, he's never had to prepare.
That's right.
His team for a conference championship game. But at the same point, like there's a lot of that's a really talented Clemson team. You really can't hold your head low over that loss. I mean, you're in the playoffs still.
Yeah. No, and this is. I was surprised actually to see him in the playoffs. I'll be honest with you. I thought the way that game looked. I know we talked about it last week. If it was close, maybe Notre Dame would still be a number 4. 34-10, and just the way they looked in that game, it just looked like a different class of team. Now, I haven't really been following A&M to see if they deserve to jump Notre Dame. There's been discussion on that. I know our Cincinnati friends will always say, hey, Cincinnati should have jumped up. And so it's always tough to measure those other teams against a Notre Dame, but it couldn't have gotten much worse is from what I saw unless it was, I guess, 42-0 or something like that. It could have obviously been worse, but it was definitely a blowout. I agree. It was against a great team, a team that you'd beaten once before and was coming back to with a little bit of revenge and a chip on their shoulder to prove that you don't just beat a Clemson team like that.
And who knows, going into the playoff with Alabama, that not having played them before, it might be it might benefit them. So now let's go into the very next talking point, and is the college football playoffs. Notre Dame is in.
That's right.
I mean, they got the 4 seed. As I predicted last week, I said if they get obliterated, which by the score line they got obliterated, they would still be in the college football playoffs, and they're in the college football playoffs. So the problem is they're about to go up against
the number 1 team.
The best team in college football in Alabama.
Maybe we just pause there for a second and think about this top 4 selection. What do you think? Did Notre Dame just deserve to get in? And you were mentioning that even if they did, They've played 11 games. I thought that gives them a edge over some of these other teams that maybe played 9 or even less. They've won 10
Oklahoma
of them.
State. Sorry, I didn't. Did you hear that?
Yeah, so no, but still, I think your only loss coming to a very good Clemson team, and you still have that Clemson win on the schedule, as well as North Carolina. I think Notre Dame deserved to be in the conversation. I know there's plenty of Notre Dame haters out there who would love to see them out of it, but like I said, I think A&M has a good argument to be in there. But once you get to these 2 and 3 loss teams like Oklahoma and Florida, I just really have a hard time putting a team like Florida, which finished still above in the college football playoff rankings at number 7, above Cincinnati, who finished undefeated, is just ridiculous to me that a 3-loss team, an 8-3 team, could finish ahead of a 9-0 team if you're playing Division I football, right? Like, I understand there's Power 5 conferences and there's differences in levels of competition, but if we're going to claim this as a playoff for Division I football, right, like this top tier, then if a team goes undefeated, you can't, like, they're just, I don't know, 3 games just feels like too much to me. I don't know why it's very arbitrary like that. I'm not as upset about the 2 games from Oklahoma, but 3 games just seems ridiculous. So,
which I think will probably be part of what we talk about in our sidebar, but at the same point, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame is at least one of the top 4 best programs this year. I mean, this is without a doubt. I mean, the other thing is, I think that I didn't talk about in our last talking point, was that Clemson needed this win more than Notre Dame did. I mean, if they had a second loss, which obviously would have been to Notre Dame, it would have been absolutely laughable to have Clemson in the playoffs, even if they were deserving. But the thing is, the next team would have been A&M, and A&M got absolutely destroyed by Alabama. So the selection made the correct call of who goes where in the selections. I mean, maybe Notre Dame should have been 3. I think that's actually a great argument. But regardless, they are still in the playoffs. I think what it was is they didn't want to have Clemson and Notre Dame go for a 3rd time back-to-back.
Yeah, back-to-back weeks. That would have been funny to see. No, I think Notre Dame's got obviously their hands full with Alabama, the deserving number 1 team who beat a very good Florida team in the SEC title game. So, yeah, this Alabama team is not untested. They're your typical Nick Saban powerhouse. It seems like for the past 10, 15 years, we've been singing Nick Saban's praises, and he's had these 11-win teams coming into kind of the end of the season. So Notre Dame is familiar. I think they played Alabama in, what was that, 2012 national title game. Yeah. Obviously very different teams now, but just were on a different class back then. That was the Manti Te'o year. And I could see a similar outcome here again when they play in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. It just doesn't feel to me that Notre Dame can keep up with an Alabama on a scoring standpoint. If looking what they did to Florida and putting up the points they did, if any sort of game like that happens against Notre Dame, I don't see Ian Book in this offense putting up 40-plus points against an Alabama defense. I just don't see it happening. I could see maybe Notre Dame's defense holding Alabama, to all these top 5-10 teams are powerful offenses. To see the defense holding them to 30, 35, and that's a win in college football. These top tier teams, if your defense can hold their offense to that sort of output, if you look at these averages. But I don't know. I like Alabama obviously in that game. They're going to be, I think they're 17.5 point favorites coming in right now.
Yeah.
And that seems about right. Just what I would expect, given with Notre Dame's last game.
It's kind of hard to make an argument against Alabama in this game, but obviously that's something we're going to preview in our next podcast. Which, by the way, there might be a surprise guest.
Oh,
so I'm gonna hold.
Is this going to be a surprise for me or for our listeners?
For both.
Okay.
No, obviously you'll be let known about who it
Yeah.
is, but our viewers will still be like, oh, "Who is it? Who is it? I can't wait for the anticipation." But we that's something that will be talked about in our next podcast. But yeah,
You want to talk? Okay.
go. What were you gonna
No, you
say?
want to talk quickly about Clemson, Ohio State, the other side of the semifinal?
Well, that could be a sidebar, but sure. How about that? Yeah, I think that's probably what the seating should be, just because of how the result was in the ACC Championship.
Yeah.
Um, do I think that Notre Dame is the fourth best team? No, I think they are either the second or third best team. I, I don't know which one they would be because obviously with the difference of what happened in the season series between Clemson, but with Ohio State, I think the way I don't know, it's hard to put into words.
You
I
want
just
to talk?
I just don't think they had a strong enough schedule, nor did they play enough games to really prove that they are better than Notre Dame.
Yeah, the Big Ten certainly had a down year, and Ohio State only played 6 games, right?
Right.
But they didn't lose any of those 6, and like I said last week, they rolled in from last year. They kept some of that talent. They're one of these teams that can roll into the coming year and carry some of that reputation of the prior year into the current year, and that gets reflected in the college football playoff rankings. I mean, also part of that's just the talent you keep on the squad. So I think Ohio State's a very talented team. They've had some hiccups along the way. They didn't look great against Northwestern. In fact, to start the game, they were down there in the first half and got a few texts that Indiana should have been in that title game if Northwestern was going to win the Big Ten title. But Ohio State ended up coming back. I think their running back set Ohio State record for rush yards in a game or whatever it may have been. He just ended up running all over Northwestern. I don't think that's going to happen against a Clemson team, even though the Clemson defense has shown some to be suspect, especially in the secondary. But I think Ohio State's got a chip on their shoulder against Clemson. I think Dabo's been talking about Ohio State and kind of
Oh yeah.
slandering them a little bit. I think Ryan Day's looking for an opportunity to prove to all he's certainly playing up the disrespect card in that locker room. And I think we're going to see an Ohio State team that's just ready to play and might roll over Clemson. Now, Clemson still has Trevor Lawrence, so you can't put them away, but I think this is going to be an inspired Ohio State team.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on that one. I've never thought that Ohio State, talent-wise, was never deserving of getting into the college football playoffs. I just think that the strength of schedule and how many games they played just doesn't. When we talked about this, there was a standard that you have to meet.
That's right.
Ohio State did not meet that standard. Plus, the Big Ten changed it, and they essentially allowed Ohio State to get to the Big Ten championship. And don't be wrong,
They did. Yeah. Yeah.
And don't be wrong, they were the best team in all of the Big Ten, even though the Big Ten was pretty much a weak conference. I know I think I was talking to an Ohio State fan, and I'm sure if he listens to this, he knows exactly what I'm referring to. But he was mentioning all the teams that they didn't have to play who were all bad this year, including Michigan, who probably deserved to have the bad year that they had. But I just don't. There's just so many inconsistencies with what the committee said you had to meet, and then they allowed the Big Ten to do what they did, and they're like, oh, okay, Ohio State, get in.
So thinking about some others, we had this game. So the Sugar Bowl is Ohio State, Clemson. The Rose Bowl then is Alabama, Notre Dame. We probably won't talk again. These are both after New Year's Day bowls. Any other bowl games you want to touch on, or you want to talk maybe after the game, recap of those semifinals? Hopefully Notre Dame comes out ahead. You can keep bringing me on as your go-to Notre Dame discusser, but yeah, happy to discuss any of the other bowl games too. I'm always itching to talk Indiana football now.
Right. That could be a sidebar for our next podcast, but
what do you got in this sidebar here? So on our agenda here that James sends me pre-podcast, we have just, recap of the championship, matchup with Alabama, and then this very vague all caps sidebar exclamation point. So help me, what were you thinking here for sidebar? Happy to discuss whatever it may be.
Well, you very much conveniently, that's probably the best word for it. You conveniently glossed over one of the other talking points.
What's that?
You conveniently looked over one of the talking points.
Yeah.
Because this is a Notre Dame podcast. We got to talk about National Signing Day.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Now, obviously, we'll go more into depth, and hopefully with the guest that we have next week, if he decides that he's able to come on, about who they brought on. But essentially, the recap of what I got from listening to a lot of experts and also reading into a lot of the reports was that it was a top 10 class. The one number that really intrigued me was, even though they were a top 10 class, 0. If you're watching this vidcast and you see me putting the 0, literally there was 0 5-star recruits, and there was 11 4-star recruits. And then one of the other things, even though he wasn't a 4-star recruit, one of them was the beloved Ron Paulus' son, Ron Paulus III, who's a quarterback.
From my alma mater, Penn High School.
There you go.
That's right.
Go. So we got 2 famous people from your high school.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know if Ron will ever see. I mean, maybe he's as good as his father, but certainly not as hyped as his father was. Coming in as one of the top recruits in the early 90s. I think he was like 94, 95 era. And so big shoes to fill on campus. I don't know if he'll ever see the field as the starting quarterback at Notre Dame, but who knows?
So what essentially you're trying to say is that your high school is begrudgingly reluctant to say you guys are famous.
We have a good football program. Penn High School is one of the better in northern Indiana, but that's of a region of football. It certainly can't compete with the Ohio's, the Texas, the Floridas, and I'm not saying it is. So
no wonder why you've been looking for friends.
That's right. It does look like Notre Dame continues to recruit well at the offensive line. And Brian Kelly has kind of established Notre Dame as being a place to come if you're an O-lineman, a tight end. I think they kind of swung and missed on some of their running backs. So that was interesting to me from what I've read. I don't get caught up. It's so hard for me to get caught up in like rankings of high schoolers. It's just a lot of variables to pick. I just want to see what obviously there's a standard of talent you have to have coming in the pipeline. And other recruits like to see that, and boosters like to see that. But, I don't get all hyped up about a certain individual player until, you can see them play on Saturdays. That's just my personal, yeah.
No. That's the same thing with me. I mean, honestly, I'm more worried about the present than I am about the future. But like I said,
you should be worried about the present.
see, like all these dad jokes that you have, it's just like
you can't even make a dad. You're drinking a dad beer right now.
You know what? Shut up. I agree with what you're saying, but at the same point, it is interesting that there was 0 5-star recruits. But I think that's more of a testament to what Brian Kelly does as a recruiter, because he's not necessarily looking for quality; he's looking for quantity. And if you think about this, a lot of the guys that he was recruiting were four-star offensive linemen.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Brian Kelly knows how to develop players. Now, they may not necessarily become NFL quality guys, but a lot
He
of
certainly
yeah,
has a track record even in the NFL. I mean,
more
just
one hundred
looking around.
percent.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just saying I don't know if Ian Book is going to go to the NFL. I don't think he is. But the fact of the matter is that he's been as successful as he's been at Notre Dame. That's what Kelly wanted. He wanted
Yeah.
him to be successful at Notre Dame. I'm sure he'd be like happy that Ian Book went over to the NFL and did well there. But that's the least of his worries.
I think what's going to be interesting to see. So Clark Lee took the job at Vanderbilt, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. Is now going to be the head coach at Vandy. And just to see what that does to Notre Dame's defense and recruiting in the next 2 or 3 years. You know, they've had some great linebacker cores, defensive lines at Notre Dame while Clark Lee's been there. And just thinking through some of that, if that impacts it, you know, that'll show Brian Kelly's skill. If he can just reload with another defensive coordinator and we don't miss a beat, you know, that's all the credit should go to Brian Kelly for you know, tagging the next talent in line and kind of developing that coaching tree. But Clark Lee's been, you know, widely praised for his the defense at Notre Dame. So, you know, sad to see him go, deserving to be a head coach. Interesting if that'll be what that's going to mean for a recruiting standpoint.
Oh no, I think Lee has also done a great job of helping change up the defensive scheme a lot ever since he took over as the coordinator. And I think that's a huge reason why Notre Dame has been so good the last few years. Obviously, more importantly this year, because I mean that defense is just phenomenal to watch. But I think you're right that in a sense that maybe with him going to Vandy, it will affect the recruiting for not necessarily 2021, but more or less 2022, 2023, 2024, so on and so on.
Yeah, I did see that Notre Dame won the sweep of the Butkus Award. You know, they won the Prep Butkus Award, which I honestly didn't even know was out there for high school linebackers. And you know, Prince Colley coming to Notre Dame won the Prep Award, and then the Notre Dame senior Jeremiah Owusu Koramora won the JOK won the college award. And so, you know,
Mike Tirico.
That's you know, that's why you bring me on here for those
the
Mike
god of
Tirico.
pronunciations of names.
That's right. No, please don't call me that. That is I have butchered many a name in my day. So all right, what else did you have outside I know we're talking recruiting on a different cast. We'll bring on somebody else who knows more than I do. What do you got for sidebar? Remember, we're trying to keep it short this week.
Oh yeah, 100%. So sidebar, obviously, whenever I say sidebar for any podcast I do on this website, it just is more of the last segment. So we are in officially our last segment. Sidebar.
Sidebar music plays here. Insert.
I don't hear anything. I'm sorry.
Go.
No, but sidebar it's probably gonna be more of a two-part sidebar thing.
Okay.
Obviously, the selection of the top four. I personally think they got it correctly. But, however, there is the issue of the New Year's Six Bowls. I can't – I understand that Oklahoma has been a really good team lately, and then people have been talking about how Georgia has been the second-best team in SEC ever since JT Daniels became the quarterback, and that they actually are pretty good. It's still, you know – I'm not trying to claim bias here just because of the city that we live in. But at the same point, you know, where is the respect for a school like Cincinnati? And the thing is, I think a lot, like even, I don't know if anyone here watched the selection show on Sunday. And just how in-depth was people talking about the disrespect that Cincinnati was not getting.
Yeah.
I don't know if Cincinnati should be in top 4. I don't think they should be. That's just personal opinion. But I do believe that they should be in the Year 6 Bowl participant, and they should be playing Texas A&M. Texas A&M they got it right. They got it right. If they had been in the top 4, I probably would have been livid. But let's talk about this. I mean, it's just like is this committee bias? Is this people? Is this not respect? Is this just people overlooking certain aspects? Why is this system so broken?
I don't know. If I was Cincinnati, I would be livid, but you also look at the American Athletic Conference, right? That's just not on par with SEC. Obviously we both have a lot of UC fans who are friends of ours in the city. And I think the consensus is they were snubbed from these New Year's Six bowls, but I don't think anyone's arguing they should have been in the top 4. You could make that argument. They were undefeated, but it's just from a talent level, it's really hard to put them above any of those 4 that are in there. I think once you get outside the playoff, I know this sounds a little bit cynical, but it just comes down to money. And I don't think Cincinnati brings the viewership or the alumni base that a Florida, Oklahoma, some of these other schools that got into New Year's Six bowls, and even outside of those. I mean, so Cincinnati will deserve to be, if this was an expanded 6-team playoff, right? I think Cincinnati deserved to be in that 6-team playoff. Now, would they have been if you're looking at the final CFP playoffs? No. So that's concerning. But I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of issues with 5 through 10 in the CFP rankings, but I don't think the committee really cares about those rankings very much. To be honest with you.
No. I think they only care honestly about 1 through 4. I mean, let's be real; those are the most important rankings, and I think that's where they have the most heated debate. Now, when it comes to after what happens after the championship weekend, I think it's all fair game, and they at that point stop caring. Which, for me, I really could care less about that thought process. But same point, I understand them looking at the Power 5 conferences first because, let's be real. I mean, they're the Power 5 conferences for a reason. But at the same point, that also, in some sense, that might also screw over Notre Dame. But however, I don't think that it's necessarily that much of a factor. But at the same point, it's just like, when are you going to give another team a chance? Are you going to try and tell this team that, well, the only way you're going to be taken serious is that if you go to that conference? Like, is UC going to have to go to the Big Ten?
Well, their answer normally in any other year other than 2020 is, your out of conference schedule should really show your strength of schedule, right? You shouldn't be booking any powder puffs. You should be reaching outside to some of these Power 5 schools and trying to schedule one of these big games to see how you level up and give the committee something to measure you against. Obviously, 2020 didn't allow that. So
it was an unfair year. It's an unfair year.
And part of me says, like, the CFP committee should have understood that and said, hey, okay, you went undefeated in your conference. You couldn't pick outside your conference. And because of that, we're not going to penalize you. But they took the other tact of saying, no, we're going to measure then based on the quality. We're still going to measure on the quality of your opponents, strength of schedule. And that's going to be obviously favoriting Power 5 conferences, right? Because these other schools can't dip into that, those other high quality opponents and prove that they belong.
Well, and I think that was the point a few weeks ago when I was watching ESPN, was that they're like, there's 2 things that this is another knock on Ohio State. Sorry, friends. No, but like they were saying, like, this one team didn't play 10 games. Well, neither did Ohio State. And then there was talks like BYU, because BYU was having a lot of people were talking a lot about them. Now, I'm not saying that BYU should have been in the CFP at all, but the thing was they're like saying, oh, BYU isn't ranked as high as, let's say, Texas A&M or as Notre Dame because of their strength of schedule. Well, hold on there. Then why is Ohio State ranked that high too? Because I've mentioned this in the last podcast, and I say this to every single person, including Ohio State fans. Their strength of schedule is ranked 77th. So
you say that to every single person? You cross people on the street and you tell people Ohio State's strength of schedule?
I haven't.
You go for job interviews, you tell them, hey, Ohio State's strength.
I mean, I got hired today, so
hey, congrats! It worked. It worked.
It works.
Keep doing what you're doing. No.
But I think you get you understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
It's just more of like stay consistent. I'm not saying that BYU
Very true.
is better than Ohio State. I truly think that Ohio State is probably one of the 4 best teams in the country. I'm just saying the consistency of the arguments that are being made are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the committee needs to find consistency.
They're very very subjective now. A lot of the knock against the BCS system was it relied on these computers, and there's been calls this year of, we need to bring some of that back. I still think the playoff's better than no playoff.
I agree, 100%.
I think those people's points are agreeing with that and are saying maybe we should bring in some sort of objective metric into these rankings that weights it towards an objective measurable versus this subjective, just how the committee thinks you play and what they see on tape. That type of feedback we get from the committee. But that's for another day, another podcast. We got to wrap this one up. I think one piece I did want to end it on, just from being here in Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's future is really bright, and if they can win here in their bowl game, maybe they pull a UCF self-proclaimed national title game, title. But regardless, I think it's going to be good for, Luke Fickell's got this program going in the right direction. Hopefully he sticks around in Cincinnati. Obviously, we're talking about Notre Dame. Brian Kelly came from Cincinnati and broke a lot of people's hearts here in leaving after having some success. So hopefully it's not the same story, just Cincinnati can build on this. And you get a couple of years like this, then they're inviting you to the playoffs.
Well, and then the second part of the sidebar, which obviously this is what we're going to leave it off at. Should the playoffs expand to 8 teams? And I am going to say yes for 2 reasons. Money, because we talked in the last podcast, who doesn't like money? And 2, intrigue. And stop it. Yeah. Just stop it. I know. I see how you are in that. And the people in the podcast are not going to be able to see your reaction to that last statement I made. But in the vidcast, come on. They're probably looking at you. They're like, oh, God, it's Brian guy. He's I don't know about him.
No, I think the final, an 8 team, everybody would love it to be expanded, right? There's just all sorts of restrictions of, the school year and trying to figure that out. Obviously 2020 is this weird year that we're all going to hopefully forget here. But I think that was considered these 6 to 8 team, even expanding greater than that. But, you're thinking about holiday breaks on a college schedule, class schedules, plus the health of the students, right? You can't be having them play too many games at the college level. So I would prefer, maybe we expand it a little bit, but we can get into that maybe on next week's podcast.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, 8 teams is what it should be. The only suggestion I have for changing anything in terms of scheduling, because obviously adding an extra game is kind of hard to do. But if I were them, get rid of one of the non-conference games that you have to play.
Okay.
And obviously that doesn't affect Notre Dame if they go back to the independents. So it doesn't really matter. But for a team, let's say like Auburn or Alabama or Clemson. I mean, if you get rid of one of those cupcake games, and then you had them play an extra game, sure, you're losing one less game than a regular season, but at the same point,
Yeah.
there's
I mean,
that added benefit of being in a bowl game that is in a playoff.
yeah, you're already seeing, I think, conference schedules expand a little bit, and that would eat into what we talked about with Cincinnati, right? They're going to try to play these Power Five conferences, these non-Power Fives are going to try to get their strength schedule up. So if you restrict the Power Five, then you're just kind of limiting the ability of some of these smaller schools to make into the playoffs. So there's pros and cons both ways to that, and it's just I don't know if there's an easy answer. I think the 4 is great now. Let's see if we can expand it to 6 or 8, and that'd be the next step.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And I think we're definitely going to probably elaborate more into that in our next podcast if this person is available for it. Because
Mystery person.
this mystery person, he may be able to give his best insight. So that being said, thank you so much for listening into this podcast, or if you're watching it, thanks for watching it. And until next time, I bid you adieu.